hope this comes out all right. I'm trying a new thing because I'm aware that I still look at the wrong place on the screen when I'm recording to my camera. And that's because I have the screen facing me and I'm looking at me rather than where the camera is. So I've taken a tip from another YouTuber who has sorted that by flipping the camera around, so all I can see is the back of the phone and the camera. So the only place I can now look is at the camera, which feels a bit weird because now I'm not entirely sure whether I'm well seated, whether I'm in the right place. I don't know what my expressions are. Maybe that's actually better. Maybe because I can't see all that, I'm less worried about what I may look like. Cup of tea as well, which I'm not going to put on the same table because it makes it wobble. Anyway, so this is a bit of another waffle session really. It's been really quiet and I don't really have that much to say. I've still been putting all the little interesting things into shorter videos and shorts because I think they're just easier to digest, and if I put them all together into one long video, then people who might be interested in one thing are just going to miss it, because I think a lot of people are just flipping through the shorts on YouTube in the same way that they do with Instagram Reels, and they're not looking at the longer stuff. But I'm not doing as longer stuff at the moment because there's just not that much to say. So this last week, which is the week following my last little update, I went to the cinema. I went to see Oppenheimer. I like going to the cinema, but it's dragging myself into town and out, and the city was so busy. Of course, it's the summer holidays, and it was absolutely rammed with people, and it was noisy and smelly and pollution, and the film was great. I always go in the morning, so I went for a 10 o'clock showing because you've got less people in the cinema, and there were about 8 of us in there, and when I went in and got my ticket, she asked me where I wanted to sit, and I picked somewhere that was away from all the other booked seats. And then by the time the film started, I had a couple sitting right behind me and a girl sitting 2 seats away from me on my left. And that was okay, but the girl sitting next to me slept and ate her way through the entire film. I don't know why she bothered. Maybe like me, she had a free ticket. I'm still using my free tickets from my Club Lloyd's bank account. I've used 2 now. I've got 4 tickets left to use before I think it's about the middle of October, whether I can find enough to see. I was going to go and see Barbie as well, but I don't think I'm going to have time the way things are starting to pan out. I still haven't heard anything from the clinical trials people, so I am pretty sure that I have passed that screening that I did. I now have one quick blood screening towards the end of the week that's coming, and then providing that's okay and nothing has changed in my blood work, I go in, I think I go in on the Monday evening after. I think that's how it works. I've got to check with them when I go in on the 18th what the dates and the times actually are. It's a bit confusing on the sheet that they've given me. And only when I go in to start the 9 days course will I know if I've got in. So it's going to be really hard to do updates here. I'll do something before I go in that basically says if there aren't any other interesting posts or posts about this for the next week and a half, assume I got in. Because if I don't get in and I'm back home, obviously I'm going to be making videos about something else. But I'm still seem to be in the running for this one, so that's great. The other interesting bit of news is that I've applied for my first job via this new cleaning agency. quite a lot of jobs come up actually. It's quite good, but they're a little bit far out of my area to make it worth my while. But it's interesting looking at how the site works, and jobs appear and disappear very fast. So I think they've got quite a lot of people looking for work, but there also seem to be quite a lot of people looking for cleaners. So some of them are regular work, some of them are stand-ins where perhaps their regular cleaner is away on holiday or can't make it, and they just want someone to come in and do a 2 hour clean and that's it. Or it might be over a couple of weeks. I saw one that was over 2 weeks, just a 2 week clean. I thought, oh, I'll have that, but the dates were right when I should be doing this clinical trial, so I'm not going to take that kind of risk. But this one that came up, I think it's just a few days ago, and it's over the road from where I live. So I thought, I'll have that. And I have an interview coming up in a few days. It's actually not domestic, it's actually a business. And it's 4 hours a week. So I don't know if it's the whole building, or a couple of floors, or it's not that place at all, and that's just where the interview is. I'm not entirely sure. But 4 hours a week is going to add something to my finances, and still allows me to be flexible with everything else I'm already doing, and means that I can look for other work as well once I've settled in. But I'm going to hold my horses on that one because I haven't got it yet. But it looks quite interesting. So that's that. This last week, apart from that, has been quite quiet. We had sudden, really hot weather, which was on Wednesday. I got up about 8 o'clock and it was already 22 degrees. And that's the day I went into the city for the cinema, so it was absolutely roasting. By the time I left, it was like 27, 28 degrees. It was so hot. And then the day after, it was not as hot, but still really close. And I went for a little walk and had a look at the blackberry bushes in the local park, because usually about this time of year I go foraging, and who wouldn't want free fruits? So I did my first pick yesterday, and it looks great. I picked a whole, like, 2 kilogram margarine tub full of blackberries. I have bottled some of them because it's a lot, and I bottle lots of fruit because it's a great way to help things last longer. When you get a glut like that, you're not going to miss out on it. And of course these harvests are very short, so you need to make most of it while you can. Not so long ago I was uncanning some blackberries that I'd done 2 years ago, because I didn't go last year. And of course this is a new thing for this vlog, because I started this in December, so I've not had a chance to do any of that. The main things I do at this time of year are the blackberries, and then when they're ready, they're not ready yet, is elderberries. Did the elderflowers in the spring when I did the elderflower champagne, and now the berries are slowly ripening, and there seems to be, like the blackberries, a really good harvest. That very hot weather, very wet weather, and now I don't know what it's doing, seems to have been really good for fruit this year. My local park has loads of blackberry bushes and is always good for stocking up. So free fruit. I mean, fruit's expensive in the supermarket, and I'm not going to miss out on, that's one of my 5 a day. Fruit is something I very rarely get hold of, so I need to take advantage of this while I can. Later in the year, probably October, because you're supposed to pick after the first frost, I will probably go and do a harvest of rose hips. I really like rose hips. I really got into those a couple of years ago as well. They're really easy to store because you just dry them, and then you can stick them in jars and bottles and seal them up, and they make a really good tea, which is supposed to be a really good antioxidant and good for your immune system. I really like it. I think it's nicer than a lot of the tea bags that you buy, and it's free. So I've I've got that on my list of things to do later in the year as well. So that's pretty much the entire week. There was something else I wanted to talk about, and it's about a couple of podcasts that I listened to. And particularly now that I'm trying to get work in areas I would never have thought about trying to get work in, like cleaning, and people will look and say, that's a pretty hefty step down from, running your own little business. But the business is still running, and the other things I do are still running. I never wanted to be some big famous fashion designer. I always just wanted to run an at-home business, doing what I love to do. Back in my teens and my 20s, I wanted to be ridiculously famous. I wanted to be a famous writer. Something like that. But of course it never happened. As you get older, you start to realise that these things, because when you're in your teens and your 20s, you think you can conquer the world. You think your world's your voice, so you can do anything you like. And I wanted to be a script writer and all these things, and I wrote a script, and I had a meeting with a famous actor, and he was really up for it, and then things just didn't happen. And I've realised as I've got older that it doesn't really matter. I'm not competitive enough to care. But also as I've got older, I spent 17 years of my life working in offices for other people, and it was not wanting to be that person that got me into running my own business, which I'd always wanted to do. Running my business was always the thing that I was aiming for, but didn't know how to do it. Didn't have the infrastructure to know how to do it. And so having a life change and suddenly being able to go to university at 35, just to retrain and get into a new mindset, it broke me away from the office life, got me used to living on less, which was really important to where I am now, because I was used to reasonably good monthly paychecks, having money to go on holiday twice a year, put a bit of money in the savings. I didn't understand living on less because I don't come from that background, although I think in my head I was always a little bit thrifty, a little bit DIY, a little bit make do and mend. I'd always been like that, but never known how to implement it. So going to university and going from a good income to just a student maintenance grant, which I think was about £3,500 a year, was interesting. And I still worked on the side. I was still doing costume design, I was doing photo shoots. So I went to study fashion and then started my business in the summer between my first and second years at uni, so that I was running the early days of my business and doing the studying in tandem, so both things working together. So it meant that when I left university, I went straight into running the business. I didn't go to university for the degree. I had no intention of getting a job in the fashion industry because it's a hideous industry with a lot of horrible people, horrible ethics, and I never wanted that. I always knew I would be starting my own business. So I went to learn how to do things properly because I was always self-taught. So I learned how to pattern draft on paper. I learned how to use industrial sewing machines, all those things which I now use and are an intrinsic part of what I do. So it wasn't wasted, but I've come out with student debt, which I will probably never pay back because I don't earn enough to pay tax, which is the point at which I would start paying it back. And I've been out of uni since, 11 years now, and I don't think I've paid back a penny of it because I've just never earned enough. Even when I was running my business and I was still going out and doing some part-time office jobs and things just to make things interesting and keep things ticking over, I still never reached paycheck or tax payments. So I don't worry about the loan. I don't feel like it's, I'm never going to make my millions, and if I don't make my millions, I'll pay it off. It's as simple as that. So anyway, looking at how things have changed this year with the drop in business, which is just the business environment at the moment, everyone's going through it. And I listened to these two podcasts. One is from a podcast called Hello Monday with Jessie Hempel. And there's only one that I've recently started listening to. And I'd pick and choose which ones because they're not all relevant to me. But it was called Why Quitting Works with Julia Keller. And it's kind of to do with the quiet quitting thing that's going on at the moment, or has been going on. But it's more about discussing why quitting and why changing your plan and why maybe doing what appears to be a step back is often seen as a failure. And I don't see going from running a little business to being a part-time cleaner as a failure. The way things are at the moment financially, I see this as a stopgap. This is a way to keep a roof over my head, keep things ticking over, and keep me having the freedom that I have worked hard to maintain without me having to compromise on my quality of life and my work-life balance, because my alternative always feels like going back to office work and going back to a commute and working in offices which I don't like, and all those sorts of things just feels that, I don't even know if that would feel like a failure, because it would be more money coming in. And money is important. You need it to be able to retain some sense of control in your life. But I would rather do it this way. So that was an interesting podcast. And I followed it with one called, this is from a podcast called The Next Big Idea, which is a really interesting podcast on all sorts of interesting subjects. But this one is about work. Henry David Thoreau on making a meaningful life. And a meaningful life isn't necessarily, well, it depends on how you interpret it. It isn't wealth. It isn't about being rich and famous. It's about feeling like you are doing something worthy in the world. And that's the other kind of problem that I have, is because I like the way I run my business in terms of its ethical nature and in terms of how it's trying to combat the problems of waste in the fashion industry and things like that. And on that very small scale, I feel that I'm doing that. But I'm not making a difference to the world, because it's hard to make sales when people are still very much focused on the bottom line, which is how much money they're spending. And I don't make cheap things. They're not expensive. We're not talking premium fashion here, but they are more expensive than going to your high street and buying fast fashion. And that's the point, really. And when those sales fall back, as they have done, you do start to question whether you making a difference to the world actually matters. Of course, it serves another purpose, which is that I am creative and this is what I enjoy doing. But in some ways, I tend to just go with the flow. So the way things are changing at the moment, I don't think of these cleaning jobs as being a step back. It's a way of filling a financial gap, which is the most important thing at the moment. Certainly for this year, and from what I've been reading about the predictions for how things will go, and in my head how I think things will go, we are looking at things being like this until at least the end of next year. So there's quite a lot of ground to tread in terms of just staying on an even keel financially. I could just say I don't care and I'll just burn through my savings. But it's having the savings that I have and being very careful with them that means that although I am doing these things, I'm not under chronic pressure. You know, I'm not at risk of not being able to pay my rent when I finally get my renewal, which still hasn't arrived. So not spending those savings and maybe not having a more meaningful life at the moment is like treading water. And I might look back in 5 years and go, oh my God, I should have done more sooner. Bit late for that. What's happened has happened. What's happening is happening now. And some people, and it's that last podcast also talks about how a meaningful life can be also seen as being lazy, how if you just indulge your creative whims and you don't work a full-time job and not working hard and 6 days a week and all this sort of thing, that you're not having a meaningful life. Because we still, even despite all the quiet quitting and everything else that goes on at the moment, we still have this idea that work means doing something you don't like, and that if you're not working really hard and paying for all the things that people pay for, like subscriptions and takeaways and restaurants and holidays, that you're not doing it right. And it's not about that. You can meet in the middle. So I've gone back to a really frugal lifestyle, and the work that I do meets in the middle normally. But I don't feel that this is a step back. Who knows what may come from this? Yes, it's just cleaning, but I will meet people. I will be out. It will mean that I can put more money back into my savings, and hopefully, if the clinical trial comes off and if this job comes off, I will break even this year, which will be the first time in years since I've broken even and not had to use my savings to just fill a small gap every year. So that'll actually be quite momentous, actually. But I'm trying not to think about that because I don't want to jinx it. There's a part of me that, although you have to take control and you do have to do things, you can't just sit back and say, oh well, lap of the gods. I do feel that there is an element of karma, and that when the right things come along, they will come along. So I may or may not get this job over the road. It would be good if I did, because it's really convenient. It's more money than I would be getting from any of the other jobs, which are 2 hours a week. But if I don't get it, there's a reason for it. And it might be that actually the work's really horrible, or the company turns out to be awful, or there's something else around the corner I don't know about yet that is actually going to be better. So I don't worry when I don't get things. And again, with this clinical trial, if I don't get it, it just means I can apply for more work on the other side. It's never a fail. It just means that wasn't supposed to be for you. So I don't worry about those things. And again, because I do have the savings to back up the emergency situation, I'm not hanging my whole life on getting these jobs. I'm not under that pressure. And because I like a nice, simple, easy, stress-free life, which has been really important to me over the last 6 years since I started working from home full-time, and I managed to remove the last of the toxic things out of my life, like an ex-partner I couldn't shake off, like the owners of the building where I was still have my workshop, who were truly dreadful people and making life incredibly stressful. Getting rid of all that completely freed me from the problems that were making me not enjoy day-to-day life. So that's been really important as well. So I feel like I'm at not on a cliff edge, but kind of on a place of things changing. And some part of me feels that if you want something enough, things will happen. There's a thing called manifestation, which I think if you lived your life by it, you'd be in serious trouble. And I think it's why people have gambling problems and things like that, so manifestation is about, very broadly, if you think about something you want enough, it will eventually come to you. And I'm not talking about becoming a multi-millionaire, marrying a rich man, things like that. I'm not talking about that kind of materialism. But if I think that there's something I really would like and I don't want to spend the money on it. Let's take the last found thing I picked up. I really, really wanted a thermos cup, particularly for my car camping trips. And I didn't really want to buy one, and I didn't know which one to get. And then I was out on a walk one day, and I found one. Someone had abandoned one, or put it down and forgotten it, and left it on top of a wall. And it wasn't an expensive one. It had Lidl on the bottom, so it's a Lidl brand. But it's exactly what I needed, exactly the thing that I was looking for, but didn't really know where to start. It's a really great little thermos cup. It's perfect. And I've used it on my trips. You'll see it in my car camping trips. And I think I probably thought for about 6 months about this thermos cup. I didn't really need it. It was a want, not a need, which is why I hadn't gone out and bought one. It was a bit frivolous, a bit of a luxury. It may have cost me £3 or £4, but I didn't feel like I needed it for the sake of a couple of car camping trips a year. And then it disappeared, and I now have one. And like when I need new shelving, like maybe I need some new storage, it's amazing what you will come across on sites like Trash Nothing, or things that people have put out on the street as a, take me. And I have acquired all sorts of shelving that way. Most of my house is furnished through skip rescues and unwanteds on Trash Nothing. There's very little I've paid for to furnish this flat. So manifestation is an interesting thing. I have, of course, done actual things this year. Like I've started 2 YouTube channels. Well, this one was at the end of December, but 2 YouTube channels. I started my own website to get me away from selling just on Etsy, which is a very dodgy place to sell now. It's very risky as the only place to sell. So I started up the website. I'm trying to get better at making product videos and putting those out there. I'm trying to get better at using a Facebook business page and Pinterest. All takes time. I'm not very good with social media. It's not my thing. So I've taken control of things like that. Probably should have done it last year or the year before, but I didn't. Here we are. I'm doing it now. Better late than never. And learning along the way. I mean, I can edit videos now for YouTube. Couldn't do that 6 months ago or a year ago. And now I found the right software, free software, Power Director. As you'll see at the bottom somewhere, there's a little logo that they put up because I'm using the free version. And that's been a real game changer in terms of doing YouTube videos. Yes, the quality of my video and the quality of my volume and my sound isn't high end. That's because I'm using I think it's like an 8-year-old Samsung Galaxy J3. It's the old phone that I used to have, so that I can have a separate phone just for recording rather than using my regular phone and using up battery. My regular phone is already 5 years old now. That's going to need changing at some point, and when I change that, that old phone will become my video camera, because the camera quality is definitely better on that than the J3 I'm using at the moment. But I'm using what I have because that's what you do when you don't have the money to spend. And it's upcycle and recycle. I'm using an old phone that sat in a box for the last 4 years. So everything is kind of on a cusp. We'll wait and see how next week goes. Next week and the next two, I suppose the next week and a bit are the important ones, because it's the clinical trial. If I get it, that's going to be a big money difference on my break even this year. And if I get this job, which will mean I have an additional constant drip feed of money coming in. I think the only reason I might not get this cleaning job is because I'm doing the clinical trial. Because I've got that for 9 days, then I'm around for a couple of weeks, and then I'm off down south. They might not like that, but if I explain why I'm having that 9 days off, they might be alright. They might see it as a vocational thing that's doing good. I don't know. I may not get the trial, and therefore I'll be available. it's a limbo situation. It's a bit tricky. I wasn't planning on applying for any cleaning jobs yet because of that situation, but when this one over the road came up, it felt like one of those karma situations where you've got to give it a go. So we'll see how that interview goes, and we'll see how it may be that they don't want me to start yet. I don't know what the situation is. It doesn't say on the application that they want someone to start immediately or how flexible they are. We'll see. That's what the interview will be for. So there we are. So that's it. I think that is the update. I think my next one will probably be how the interview goes, how the second screening goes for the clinical trial, and then whether or not I get it. So there will be another update, and of course I've thrown in the shorts or whatever, because big gaps in uploads, YouTube doesn't like that. I don't want to play the YouTube game, but it would be nice to grow followers. I watched a really interesting vlog on a new channel I've just discovered called According to Nicole, and it's a very realistic approach as to how much money you can make on YouTube, and you have to get quite a lot of followers and a lot of view time. The view time is fine, it's the followers that I need. You need to get to 1,000 before you can monetize your channel, but it'd be really nice to have another side hustle in making a few quid out of YouTube. Am I going to get to that? I don't know. I mean, I know it takes at least a couple of years to monetize a YouTube channel generally, and one like mine is going to take longer. It's not high quality, it's a bit rambly at times. It's very much a niche market, even though I know people are really interested in money saving and frugality right now, but I'm probably not producing the right kind of content to get that monetization. However, as they have recently dropped the number of followers you need to 1,000, I'm only 939 away, I think. I just hit 60 subscribers last week, which felt like an accomplishment. I'm 61 subscribers now, which is really good fun actually. I really enjoy that. There are 61 people who bookmarked my channel. It's like, wow, okay. I don't know how many of those people actually come back and watch. Maybe they're all watching the shorts, I don't know, but I try to keep the shorts interesting, informative and useful, because that's what this channel is actually about. So I'm going to go now because, my God, I'm rambling and I can't even see how long I've been on here because my screen's on the other side of the camera. So I'm going to end now because I think you've heard quite enough from me. I hope you've all had a good week. Please like and subscribe to this vlog and this channel if you're not already a subscriber. It doesn't cost anything. I feel like I need to remind people subscribing doesn't mean you're paying. It's just hit a subscribe button. I'll just appear in your feed whenever I make a video, and then you can decide whether or not you want to watch them. But subscribing would be nice. So thank you very much and speak to you soon. Bye bye.